Imagine waking up one morning in the richest country on earth and going to bed in a nation quietly collapsing. No invasion, no natural disaster, no single battle lost. Just gold. Mountains of it, flowing in so fast that it destroyed everything it touched. This is the true story of how a gold policy collapsed Spain almost overnight, and why this silent mistake still shapes the world you live in today. In the early 1500s, Spain hit what looked like the ultimate jackpot. Across the Atlantic, in the newly conquered lands of the Americas, Spanish explorers discovered something Europe had never seen at this scale before. Gold, silver, entire mountains that could be melted down and shipped home. To the Spanish crown, this wasn't just wealth, this was destiny. Proof that God himself favored Spain above all other nations. Ship after ship crossed the ocean loaded with treasure. Havana became a floating vault. Seville turned into the financial heart of Europe. By the mid-16th century, Spain controlled more gold and silver than any empire in history. On paper, Spain was unstoppable. And that's where the mistake began. The Spanish government made a simple assumption. If gold is wealth, then more gold must mean more power, more prosperity, and more security. So they built their entire economic policy around one idea: bring in as much precious metal as possible, and everything else will take care of itself. They stopped worrying about production. They stopped investing in industry. They ignored agriculture. Why make things when you can buy everything with gold? Why train craftsmen when foreign goods can be paid for instantly? Spain didn't just import gold, it imported laziness into its economic system. At first, life felt amazing. The royal court lived in luxury. Wars were funded easily. Palaces expanded. Soldiers were paid. Spain became the policeman of Europe, fighting wars in Italy, the Netherlands, and beyond. Gold paid for everything. But slowly, invisibly, something dangerous was happening. Prices started rising. Bread cost more. Clothing cost more. Rent climbed. At first, people blamed merchants, then foreigners, then greedy sellers. But the real cause was simpler and far more deadly. Too much gold was chasing the same amount of goods. This was inflation before the word even existed. When gold floods an economy faster than production grows, money loses value. Every new shipment from the Americas made Spanish coins worth slightly less. Sellers adjusted prices. Workers demanded higher wages. The cost of living spiraled upward. Here's the cruel irony. Spain had the most gold, but its people were getting poorer. Farmers couldn't keep up with rising costs. Artisans were crushed by cheap foreign imports bought with Spanish gold. Local industries collapsed because it was easier to import than to produce. Spain became a consumer nation living off treasure, while other countries became producers. And those countries were watching carefully. The Netherlands, England, France. They didn't have Spanish gold, but they had something better. Discipline, industry, trade networks. They took Spain's gold in exchange for real goods, then reinvested it into factories, ships, and financial systems. Spain exported wealth and imported dependency. Meanwhile, the Spanish crown doubled down on its worst habit: war. Every time money ran low, the solution wasn't reform. It was another shipment of gold, another tax, another loan backed by future treasure that hadn't even arrived yet. The government spent tomorrow's gold today. Banks loved it at first. Spanish bonds were considered safe because they were backed by American silver. But as inflation raged and expenses exploded, confidence cracked. Spain declared bankruptcy, not once, not twice, multiple times. Imagine that, the richest empire on earth officially admitting it couldn't pay its bills. Each bankruptcy made borrowing more expensive. Each war drained more resources. Each shipment of gold fixed short-term problems while making long-term collapse inevitable. And then came the final blow. As inflation surged, gold lost its psychological power. People realized something terrifying. Gold alone doesn't create wealth. It only represents it. Without production, without innovation, without a functioning economy, gold becomes just metal. By the late 1600s, Spain was a shadow of itself. Its military weakened, its industries non-existent, its population shrinking. The gold still arrived, but it no longer saved anything. The damage was already done. Spain didn't fall in a single dramatic moment. It collapsed quietly, silently, from the inside. This is why historians call it one of the greatest economic self-destructions in history. Not because Spain lacked resources, but because it misunderstood them, and here's why this story matters to you. Modern economies don't use gold ships anymore. They use money printing, debt, easy credit, artificial wealth. But the principle is exactly the same. When money grows faster than real value, collapse doesn't come with explosions. It comes with rising prices, shrinking opportunity, and silent decay. Empires don't fall when they run out of money. They fall when money stops meaning anything. If this story made you see wealth differently, if you want to understand how powerful systems really collapse without warning, this is exactly what we explore on Silent Collapse. Subscribe to the channel because the next collapse rarely looks dangerous until it's too late. Spain learned that lesson with gold. The modern world is learning it with numbers on a screen. But there's one part of Spain's collapse that almost no one talks about. When gold lost its power at home, Spain tried to control the damage by force. The government fixed prices, controlled wages, and imposed heavy taxes on anyone still producing value. On paper, this looked like stability. In reality, it crushed the last working parts of the economy. Producers stopped producing. Farmers reduced output. Merchants hid goods. Black markets exploded. The state was drowning in gold, yet shelves were emptier than ever. And then came the psychological collapse. People stopped trusting money. They rushed to spend it as fast as possible, knowing prices would be higher tomorrow. That behavior accelerated inflation even more. Once trust breaks, no amount of gold can restore it. This is the point where Spain crossed the line from decline into irreversible decay. Other nations didn't just survive Spain's collapse, they fed on it. England used Spanish silver to stabilize its currency. The Dutch built the world's most advanced banking system using capital Spain carelessly exported. Spain funded the rise of its own rivals. By the time Spanish leaders realized gold was the problem, not the solution, it was already too late. You can't rebuild industry overnight. You can't retrain a population that spent generations living off imported wealth. Economic habits, once formed, become economic destiny. And that's the real lesson. Collapse doesn't start when a country runs out of resources. It starts when leaders believe resources can replace productivity, when consumption feels like success, when easy money feels safer than hard reform. Spain didn't collapse because it was unlucky. It collapsed because it chose comfort over structure, short-term power over long-term strength. And every empire that followed has faced the same choice. If you're watching this and thinking, this sounds familiar, that's not an accident. History doesn't repeat itself, it upgrades. That's why Silent Collapse exists. To expose the quiet decisions that destroy powerful systems long before anyone notices. Stay with this channel, because the most dangerous collapses are never loud. They're comfortable. There's one final illusion. Spain never escaped. Even as the economy weakened, leaders kept pointing to gold reserves as proof of strength. As long as treasure ships arrived, they believed collapse was impossible. But real power had already shifted away from Spain, quietly and permanently. Because while Spain counted gold, other nations counted skills. Shipbuilding moved north, banking innovation moved to Amsterdam, manufacturing shifted to England, trade routes evolved without Spain at the center. The world didn't need Spanish gold anymore. It needed systems, efficiency, and trust. Spain had none of those left. By the 1700s, Spain was no longer shaping global rules. It was reacting to them. Its empire existed on maps, not in influence. The same gold that once made Spain feared now made it irrelevant. This is the moment every declining power fails to recognize. Wealth is not what you own, it's what you can consistently create. Spain owned unimaginable treasure, but it lost the ability to generate value. And once that ability disappears, recovery becomes almost impossible. You can't buy discipline. You can't import innovation. You can't fund trust with metal. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Spain didn't collapse because of greed. It collapsed because it mistook abundance for sustainability. It believed money could replace structure. It believed dominance could replace discipline. and history has been punishing that belief ever since. Every major collapse follows the same silent pattern. Easy wealth arrives, hard work declines, systems weaken. Leaders deny reality, and by the time collapse becomes visible, the damage is already irreversible. No alarms, no countdown. Just a slow realization that something fundamental is gone. Spain's gold policy didn't fail overnight in one dramatic crash. It failed in the most dangerous way possible. Gradually, comfortably, quietly. That's why this story matters more now than ever. Because modern societies don't need gold ships to repeat this mistake. They just need to forget where real value comes from. If you understand this, you're already ahead of most people. And if you want to keep seeing how powerful civilizations destroy themselves without noticing, you're in the right place. Silent collapse isn't about the past, it's about patterns, and the pattern never lies.